Now, to discuss this a little more, we can bring in Emadeddin Badi to the show. He is a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council and a specialist on all things related to governance and conflict in Libya. Thank you for joining us. Firstly, tell us what does Saif al-Islam Gaddafi stand for and who are his supporters?
Well, it's unclear today who actually or what Saif Gaddafi stands for. It's been actually a couple of decades rife of opportunism for Saif Gaddafi, and I think this move today is effectively no different. In the years, in the years leading up to the revolution, he kind of self-proclaimed himself as a reformer, liberalizing force in Libya. After that, in 2011, essentially, he shed that mantle to side with his late father against the then rebels in a pretty controversial speech that a lot of people still remember and is still very vivid in their minds, and what he stood for then. And this is today again another opportunistic moment for Saif, where being no longer the reformer or no longer signaling that he is effectively the pre-2010 Saif, let's say, he's now trying to tap into a new demographic, which are essentially those experiencing nostalgia for the Gaddafi regime and perhaps also members of his clan and those loyal to his father. But it'll be difficult for him to actually tap into that demographic, and it'll be actually very difficult for him to even navigate the landscape as it is today in Libya.
And a Tripoli court actually sentenced him to death for war crimes, not to mention the ICC. How can this man stand for election? Will he even be able to campaign without fear of arrest?
Well, I would say that this is a problem that actually speaks to this careering or this internationally pushed careering of Libya towards election on the 24th of December. What has happened in the recent months, effectively, is that consensus over the laws for election has been almost cast aside in favor of expediently holding them, which diluted all issues really relevant to as it pertains to what the requirements are to actually stand for elections. And this, in fact, has created a legal framework that is so flimsy that on a loophole, it could technically allow him to partake in these elections. And even if he doesn't partake or isn't allowed, that creates even perhaps more of a controversy in that a lot of perhaps of his allies, etc., will try and delegitimize these elections for having marginalized him.
Now, you just mentioned that crucial date, December 24th. France hosted an international summit on Friday, really pushing for the vote to take place on that day. What is this time frame? Is it really realistic? I mean, what else should be solved before this date?
Well, there are plenty of issues that would have needed to be solved before this day, and that the roadmap from the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum, the political track to get to these elections, stipulated that should happen before these elections, namely military unification is one, at least, of the most prominent ones. Another is unifying the judiciary, coming to a consensual kind of agreement on what the election laws and the legal and constitutionality of these elections will be. Other than that, basically, there are also legal frameworks governing who should actually run. And the departure of foreign mercenaries also was a salient issue, all of which have really not happened insofar as basically at least the departure of mercenaries and the consensus on the electoral framework for elections is concerned. And I think really the summit in Paris missed an opportunity to really tackle these issues at the root cause. And today we experience at least partly the cost of that, in that Saif effectively is allowed or is trying to run, and this could perhaps lead to the collapse of the political track. Another issue as well, which is perhaps more geostrategic or geopolitical, is that it seems that his candidacy is backed by Russia. And the move today, coming after the Paris summit, is quite well timed after the Paris summit, effectively.
All right, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Emadeddin Badi from the Atlantic Council, thank you so much for your analysis.